This episode is brought to you by O2, the official recovery drink of the Noble CrossFit Games. For more information, you can use the QR code or you can click the link in the show notes below.
I'm Jimmy Hensel, and let's talk about Mayhem Mindset.
In this episode, we dig into mindset, specifically how it's going to benefit the affiliate owner.
And you guys can find out how Jay has nothing to work on with regard to his mindset. Welcome to the best hour of their day podcast with your hosts, Jason Fernandez.
And me, Jason Ackerman. With more than 20 years in the business,
As both coaches and affiliate owners,
our passion is to help create world-class affiliates
and coaches by building
better boxes. Welcome to
the best hour of your day.
Here we are, still at CrossFit Mayhem. The founder of Mayhem Mindset, Jim Hensel, on the show with us. Fern, I have a sneaking suspicion this is an intervention.
It is an intervention. Jay has problems with money, emotions, teamwork, and I'm hoping we can get this solved.
Either I'm going to help you or I'm going to wreck you, one of the two. So.
Either way, he'd be happy.
Yeah. But yeah, we wanted to chat with you. We were just kind of wrapping a little bit before we hit record, but before we kind of get into Mayhem Mindset, like, give us a little bit of your background. Where are you from? How'd you kind of get into this space, if you will? Just kind of let the viewers a little, who are you?
Yeah, I'm from Colorado.
You were saying you went to
Loveland and Fort Collins, Colorado is where I
so
grew up.
An hour away from me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I started University of Colorado kind of education there, and then got tossed in jail and got in trouble and got kicked off the football team, and then spent.
You guys have a lot in common. We were just talking
about my jail time as well. So
on the way here.
Collegiate athlete, go to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's part of the deal.
And then honestly, the genesis of what I do was a divorce. My wife left me. Had two little girls, and just dark time. Didn't know who the hell I was, and really struggled. And so that kind of started this process, and I was working eventually as a player development coach in the football world.
Still in Colorado?
I was in Colorado at that point, yeah. And then ended up getting remarried later in life and married a girl from here, and came to Tennessee Tech and was working in that capacity at Tech. And then somebody said, "Hey, do you know who Rich Froning is?" And I said, "I've heard that name."
Never heard of him.
Yeah.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. And then Rich ends up being a client of mine, and working through the mindset stuff, really not about CrossFit for him in his world, but more about setting a vision for his life in the future and what he wanted that to look like. And bang, here I am. So
You must have had a company running prior to Mayhem Mindset then.
I did.
Yeah,
this is like my 18th year doing something like this, and it's been called different things. But
so to go back a little bit, because that's an interesting story. So not necessarily about the divorce, but when you decide to make that transition, you're like, hey, I need to make it through this hard time. And then how do you start piecing together that, like, I've got something here, I've got a little bit of a formula, and then I'm assuming you start with yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how does that morph into, like, I want to help other people with this?
Yeah, had no idea that I was ever going to be here or helping somebody. That wasn't even on the radar. No thoughts about that.
You were just like, I'm trying to
I went to bed
survive and
depressed.
fix up my life, right?
You know, my wife left me for a high-profile person. I'm questioning everything. Who I am as an individual, what's my worth as a human being, am I enough? A lot of the things that I wanted with my life, I got hurt late and didn't get to be a professional football player, and I dealt with some big blows, and this was a huge blow that if it hadn't have been for having two little girls, I don't know that I would have made it through it.
How old are they now?
29 and 26.
Adult.
My kids are
yeah.
crushing it now.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're crushing it.
And that
which
probably
is
makes
cool.
you feel good. You've
So
done a
good.
good job, right?
So good.
And we each have a daughter. We're very I'm very nervous.
He's far more
very
nervous than I am.
Yeah, it's a different time.
Yeah, I get it.
To raise
I get it. The stories I can tell you.
Please don't. I'm already nervous. I'm nervous enough. This isn't helping my mindset.
Yeah, but I kind of want to dive into what your process is, and obviously a lot of the folks who are going to listen to us are affiliate owners.
Sure.
And a lot of affiliate owners have those exact same questions for different reasons, and how kind of what you do can help people.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've been through numerous bouts of this, making transitions in life out of the military into a new career, not checking certain boxes in the military, leaving college athletics, and some of those rides are a little wild.
100%.
You know,
So one thing that I think happens a lot in the affiliate world, I see in other areas of coaching, is you become defined by that, and that's who you are. And it sounds like part of this for you was, you kind of said it, like figuring out who you are and your value in the world. And I think affiliate owners need to do that, because it's hard to separate the person they are and the affiliate.
100%.
So can we dive in there to begin with?
Yeah.
We're, obviously this is a podcast. People can reach out, though, to be clear, and hire you.
Sure.
Where can they do that, just so we put it out there now?
MayhemMindset.com. Everything he needs right there.
Makes sense. Yeah, good
Makes
brand. Simple.
Trying to get it right.
And your email or submit
Yeah,
is
it's all there.
probably not going to you. But
Yeah.
So where can they start with that? I think you open an affiliate. You do it because you're passionate about it. You want to help others. And then you're in charge of this community. You're a leader amongst 50, 100, 200 people. Where do you begin separating, like, who you are as a human being from box owner?
Yeah, what I'm going to talk about applies in all areas of life, and there's what we know about science behind it. What we know to be human. Let me use Rich as an example. My first conversation with him is, "Hey man, if I could take CrossFit from you, today's your last day, man. Who the hell are you?"
And to be clear, when you started with him, where was he in his journey?
He's been a CrossFit champion. He's successful.
So it was more than just, I do this thing.
Yeah.
That was like, this place is because of this thing.
Yeah. The question is, the things that define you, is that something you're just doing? Soldiers, same kind of thing. You get out of the service and then, whoa, identity was in what I was doing.
He got kicked out, so it was a little easier for him to deal with
They're like, we
that.
don't need you anymore.
Okay. I can relate to that.
I told you, it's been a rough life, man.
Yeah. So in my game, capital BE, and I do this on purpose to separate these things: values, talents, and purpose. That's what that means. When
Capital B.
to be versus the do, the job or the task.
What were those again?
Be versus do.
But what were the things you put under that category?
Values, talents, and purpose.
Balance, talents, and purpose.
Understanding what that is in your life, and so that what you do, whether you're an athlete or a soldier, that doesn't define you, so that the end of that, you understand where you're going next. And purpose is this really weird word that we use, and all the books that are written about it, and it means so many different things. So for me, it was a dark time, and it could be opportunity. You miss opportunity, a dark time that puts you in a place in life where you need to understand this about yourself. So I think there are 3 components to being able to re-aim your life daily. You need to understand your identity, your personal identity. Who the hell are you, and why are you on this planet? You need to understand your values or your strongest beliefs. I don't mean anything weird. I mean, what do you really believe in?
It's one of the drills we do, one of our first drills with our clients. Yep.
Yeah, and then connect that to a routine. Motivation, systems, goals, habits. So
I think that's one of the biggest disconnects, right? So you can do the core values portion of that, but like, right, but how do I take this exercise, which feels kind of whatever? Well, I don't think it's some people feel it's like, okay, whatever, I did this thing, feels good, put it on the wall. But then there's a major disconnect between that exercise and like, right, but are you actually living that? Have you figured out a way to like weave this into like what time you get up,
100%.
What meal you eat, when you train, do you train, all that kind of stuff. So what do you see as one of the biggest problems with like making that connection so I can take these core values and make them actually part of who I am?
Well, first I think people think that this idea of identity, to me, this is where this starts, is something that you find or discover, and I don't think that's true. So I bump into people who are lost in routine.
Okay.
That's all they think about.
Yep.
How am I motivated?
Right.
What new system, setting goals? This is all they ever think about, without understanding where their feet are. If it's addressing the bar to teach someone to power clean, the first thing we're talking about is the positioning of your feet and how you set up to the bar. I don't care about anything after that.
Right.
So this idea of identity and values is not clear in a lot of people's lives. And it's easy because I can go up to people and say, define yourself. And they can't. They can't tell you what they are. It's some sort of maybe undercooked ideology that it's not really real in their life.
Well, it's a terrifying question if I was to be very candid with you.
100%.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah.
Like, I mean...
Yeah, well, here's what we know. The science is we feel first. Limbic brain fires first. We deal with emotion. The neocortex fires second, and it puts language to emotion. The thinking part of who we are. And thinking and feeling are 2 very different things. And we get those
Right.
confused in our culture. So
Right.
my process is simply, hey, let's separate emotion and make sure we're good with dealing with that. How does that affect your life? It's different for an athlete or a cop or, you know, a person who works at, you know, some corporation. Then what are your values? And they can't be just 10 neat words.
Mm-hmm.
They got to be words that actually represent your strengths, your weaknesses, and your ideals. So there needs to be some work there to make sure it's authentic. And you test what you believe. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. If you say this is real in your life, well, let's make sure it's not BS. Let's make sure it's something that really is real, so that when you start, when we put ourselves under pressure, what's real comes out. It's funny. You get a job interview here, and they just put you in a workout.
I love that.
That's cool.
Just
It's like jiu-jitsu, like we were talking about earlier. You can learn a lot about a person under pressure.
Just put some pressure on you. I
Choke
don't want
somebody
to
and
kill
see how they
you.
react.
I don't want to kill you. I just
But I
want you
wanna
to
choke you out.
Just strangle you a little bit, or put you 2 rounds, you know,
Right.
kind of underwater, and then we see who you are. So what happens is, if we don't understand identity, and that is this idea of why I'm on this planet, and I don't think you chase it. I think the clues to that are in your design. We can define it. We can know. I did. I worked through it and figured it out for my life. So I had a really clear idea of identity and values, and that's how I set up every day and then connected that to this idea of routine. Well, I could get up and I could aim straight every day. There was no guarantees that I was going to do it, but I had a fighting chance, and that ended up being this process that we now call Mayhem Mindset.
Could you give an example of that, like a very simple example?
And I would love to hear your story.
Maybe not even yours, but if you want to give yours.
Well,
Hey, man, my wife leaves.
how long of a period was like, I'm depressed, I'm upset?
I mean, I'm in the middle of it. I mean, I'm depressed for weeks and weeks and weeks.
At the time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is decades ago,
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah, 18, almost 19 years ago.
Okay.
But so how long, you're saying it was weeks, like she left and you're just in the thick of it?
Yeah, man. When I woke up and what I realized was I didn't know. All I could do was pay attention to what I'm saying now. All I could do was feel.
Right.
Right. You felt pain.
All I could do was just feel.
It's just
That's
meaning
it.
like it's just
Just
overwhelming.
emotion.
You can't get past it.
Just can't get. I did not know how to think, and I did not know what to think, and those two things ended up being really important.
So what do those steps look like to climb out of that depression for you?
My thoughts weren't as developed as my emotion.
Okay.
The words that came out of my mouth were not as developed as what I was feeling, and I realized, holy smokes, like this idea of values or beliefs or my why or my purpose, that was my dad's or some preacher's.
That it put it on you.
Yeah.
As these are now yours as well.
No, now I got to figure out how to come forward. Well, what is that? I don't know what that is. I got 2 little girls. What does that mean? Well, I love them to death, so I'm gonna hang in there. But outside of that, I was not a very defined human being.
Mm-hmm.
And you can dig too far. I think parents. Mine's 14 months, so it's new. But
Right.
like you can lean into that so hard. Well, I'm a dad, and that's my purpose. But you're also probably somewhat not really living by who you are.
Well, I mean, the next question is, what happens when you're not a dad?
Right.
What's your purpose?
So what was that? Talk us through, because I imagine everything you went through was the catalyst to Mayhem Mindset.
Yeah, I think this. If you don't know who you are as an individual, first, then you won't know how you fit in your family. You won't know how you fit in your team. You won't know how you fit in society. So you have to do the work first as an individual and understand what that is. And that's just true because that's how it works. You know, not because I say it. It's just true. So Mayhem Mindset became challenges. And what happened was I just started following my heart. Literally, I'm like, you know what? Okay, so what? I made this list of what I thought were this idea of values or strongest beliefs because I needed to have a target to aim at. Emotion and momentum were overwhelming me. So I needed a clear target. I needed to get my emotions under control, and I needed a clear target to aim at. So I made a list, and then when I made that list, I realized it was not authentic. I couldn't really describe those things, and they weren't holding up under pressure. I couldn't really tell you what that was other than this idea of family. People will say a core value is family, you know. Well, for me, it's an anchor value for me now. But I can really authentically define that, and I can tell you really what that means to me, you know.
Can you do that? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean,
Just so people hear what that sounds like, because I think, again, like you said, it's like, hey, slap some values on the wall, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah,
What's the practical application of that?
family for me started with relationship. That's where I started to connect to that. These 2 individuals, these 2 little girls, I'm going to have a relationship with. and I'm always going to be reliable. So relationship and reliability with them. And I'm flat going to be there. There's no way I'm not going to be there. And that definition turned out like that. And that's what I'm chasing with people. I want it, when you tell me what that is, I want you to be able to give me a really authentic definition from your heart about what that is. And we want to put it in writing so we have it. There's power in this creative ability to write things down for sure. But I don't want to hear some slogan, you know?
Right, like you wrote that down, but that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it's garbage. Like that doesn't hold up under any scrutiny or
You read
pressure.
that line in a book and applied it to yourself.
Yeah, it's somebody else said that, or even it was in the Bible.
Right.
You know, like
it sounds good.
That stuff's all good if it survives the pressure test. So in my process, I really want people to take whatever slogan-y things they might say, or even how they describe what they believe in right now, and set it aside. It's like tying your hand behind your back for a push-up. I want you to fight for new language. So I think it's possible to really define yourself and know what identity is, and the clues are in your design, and we can work at that. And then this idea of values, we can create a list. People start the process and they'll have 6 values and it's not very well defined. They're things that they think they believe. And by the time we're done and we get into the 11th or 12th week, there's a list of 50 things. And now the challenge is for them to really, really narrow those things and make that something that is super meaningful, that's really actionable. And so that's the start of it for me was, man, I have to know how to move forward. And it took me about 6 months, and I just followed my heart. The first thing was, every time someone else has an opinion, I change.
That's a perfect. I mean, how good is that for box owners?
All right, let's talk box owners. All right, so this is a major struggle. So, do you work with any affiliate owners by chance?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so you probably have a pretty good insight on this, or a very good insight on this. So, one of the biggest things that we see is they had an emotion about CrossFit. That emotion spilled over into, I want to share this with other people. And then it's not well defined, meaning like when pressure comes with regard to challenges on how you run your business, what you're going to offer, does somebody want to cancel a membership? I've got an HR problem with a coach who's got a bad attitude that I should probably let go, but I'm struggling with that, like all that stuff. That's when they fold, because they don't have anything that's rooted in like, nope, you're not pushing me off this ledge. Like this is where I'm going to hold right here. What are some things that you've worked with affiliate owners on, like to start to box that in so that they can make clear decisions, because they are completely blinded by emotion. They love CrossFit. They love this community. They don't want to let anybody down. And then somebody starts to challenge that in some way, shape, or form, not even maliciously, just the nature of how the gym works. And then it's
an outside the gym thing too, right?
And then all of a sudden they were here, and all of a sudden they're 10 steps back this way, and they're like, I have no idea how I got here.
With emotion and momentum, not because of it. I'm talking about that all the time. Making choices with learning. If you think about it in weightlifting, we're learning to use momentum to our advantage, right? So the key to this is really this is a strength value in my game. I call Mayhem Mindset a game. This is a mountain I'm willing to die on. That's a category of value, and you have to have that. You need to understand your identity. So what does that mean? There are a bunch of CrossFit gyms, and they all do different things. I've been to grip it and rip it places where that's what's happening, and we're just throwing weight around, and I've been to places that are almost like a church.
Yep.
Like literally that's what the guy who runs the place thinks that's kind of his mission. So what's your identity as the gym? That's this idea of purpose. What does that mean? And figuring that out, and that's possible. This is what we're going to do in our community. Then what are those core values? Because that's the foundation, and we need some of those strength values that are the big rocks. It doesn't matter who walks in the door. It doesn't matter. We don't compromise this.
Yeah, you're not going to move this boulder.
This is the one that just stays the same, period. And if it's not good for you here, then you have to go on. I deal with that in businesses all the time. You go into a boardroom with the C-suite group of people, and they got these mission statements on the wall, and none of them in the room knows what it is.
Right.
They can't even tell you what it is. And so we'll stop and slow down, and I'll have each one of those people define themselves. And then when we're done with that work, let's overlap the values and see where we're really all connected and where we can make a difference. So if I'm the problem with this idea of values and identity and purpose and stuff is that people want to do that one time and then they're done with it. They end up over in momentum. Momentum will just do it to you. If you're not really secure in who you are, then you will compromise when that person comes through the gym door. and says, hey, we should be doing this. And you're like, well, that's not what we do. And then you're trying to keep everybody happy instead of it being a values-based choice that you can really back up and you can be articulate about. You're dealing with emotion and momentum again.
Yeah, so like an example of one of ours in the box would be fairness. And
You're just talking specifically CrossFit rifle.
correct, yeah, CrossFit. So I've owned my field for almost 13 years, but it's fairness, and I can anchor a lot of decisions in fairness, and it doesn't necessarily mean everything is equitable, right? But just the idea of fairness, and because it's helped me.
It's like our conversation on the car right here about payroll this morning.
Yeah. So but you can apply that idea of fairness to almost every scenario, and it's not going to be the same in every scenario, and that's why I really like that idea, and that's why it allows me to mold it. I'm like, that is fair, and I think most reasonable people would come with like, if you were to ask the question, if I presented you with a scenario, be like, is that fair? Most people, whether they acknowledge it or not, like, nope, that's not fair, or yes, that's fair, and that's one of ours, and it's helped me make a slew of decisions, memberships, staff, how I interact with the staff, my family. But this idea of fairness is like, is that fair? And then you kind of run that through the washer. And it might take a while. And I might wrestle with it a couple of times, but that is one of our big ones.
Values and rules are two very different things.
Right.
So I want to teach values because values help someone be a critical thinker. I started my daughters with 3 values when they were little. I wanted to eliminate rules. I'll have them, but they're a reserve parachute. We need some rules, but I don't want them to be rule followers, and I don't want them to have to, in my case, run back to the fridge every time to check what the rule was.
Yeah.
I taught them kind, gentle, and generous. And then I could simply say to them, hey, man, did you hit your sister? Is that kind? Is that gentle? No. Well, then why are you doing it? Not run over to the fridge and check rule number 7.
Don't hate your sister.
Don't hate your sister. So values are the same. What you just described is exactly that. I can stop and I can immediately take the action and then compare that through the filter of these values and come up with a just and fair
Right. So a practical
choice.
example, I was just having a conversation with one of the gyms we work with. So he has these rules with regard to who can go to what classes and cancellation fees. And so he walked me through this scenario, and he abided by the rules. So I asked him, I said, is that fair? And he said, no. I said, well, then break the rules. They're your rules.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to hear you say that, because that's largely how we teach it. You have to have those rules. You're running a business. It can't just be a free-for-all.
For sure.
But then those rules need to be layered over with fairness, because, and people always ask us, should I let this person, out of their 30 days notice? And I'm like, is it fair to let them do that? Like, does it make sense? Is
and
it
fair also is to the other members as well.
all of it, right?
Right.
You and it's when you run it through that filter, people come, in my opinion, to more often than not the right answer. Way more often than not. And it's like, forget the rules. We have the rules. The rules is like the initial lock on the door, right? Just like it keeps most things out. But after now we have to wash it through the value and be like, is it fair that I'm going to break this rule? And then you can go from there. And the answer might be, nope, we're holding on the rule, or it might be, throw the rule out the window. This makes sense to not abide by this.
Yeah.
How often, because you kind of said they evolve or change, how often do you think an affiliate owner should be reevaluating their values?
Well, think about, let's use the value of family for me, which really was my parents at that point, when I was in that tough time, and then really became more about my kids. Well, later I got remarried, now I have a granddaughter. That value.
You got a granddaughter?
I do. Yeah.
You're so young.
Thank you.
How old's your
All
granddaughter?
that lotions and cream I
How
keep
old's that
smearing on.
granddaughter?
She's 12 or 13 months.
How I can tell you're a tough guy, by the way?
How's that?
I see the eyebrows.
Yeah.
The eyebrows.
I got smacked a
You've
couple
been
of
beat
times.
up a couple of times. Or maybe you've done the beating. But
Well, I think pretty much I've been mostly on the losing end of that, but I was there. Let's just say that. What were we talking about?
you said you have a granddaughter. You were saying how old you were.
Oh, the value
no,
of
just kidding.
Family, yeah.
miles.
Family.
Let's just refer to it as
Miles.
miles.
Experience.
That values they grow. They're not static. So the way that I'm coaching someone in mindset is that you're never done with that. And we have values that we call ideal values, and we change those every year.
And that is more like to be the ideal version of you.
Yeah.
What are your ideal values?
It's more connected to goals and things that I want to do this year. I'm saying, okay, this is the thing I want to I want to get ego out. My need to be right. There's some discussion in all of that, but I want to be a fool and then I want to be great. And so I'm willing to start at something new that I'm not that great at and really grind at it, or something I might see in your life. I'm like, yeah, I'm working on that. Last year was freedom for me. I mean,
what did that represent for you?
Man, I was like, what does that really friggin' mean? Because we're talking about it in our culture all the time. So I started from the time my
Mayhem
feet
Freedom. One of the team names, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in that.
Yeah.
And that word freedom.
That's a big one.
So my deal was like what I got out of it, and I studied freedom for the whole year. I read about it. It's what I purposely, and then I began to think about, am I really free? When my feet hit the floor in the morning, am I driving this thing, or is something driving me? You know, am I being intentional here? And the word I got to is, am I the influencer?
I mean, I'm an influencer, so.
And I don't mean like that kind of influencer.
Oh,
Please,
different.
thank God.
Yeah, you shouldn't shoot that high. Let's be honest. I'll coach you up a little bit.
Consider,
we'll barter.
I'm going to consider changing that word right now.
When I told you he needed a coach, now you see what I'm talking
you
about.
You go to mayheminfluencer.com. That's my site.
You just F that whole thing up right there. I was thinking about, am I driving my day?
Right.
Yeah.
You know? And what I found was no. I mean,
what aspects of it?
I was checking email, and then all of a sudden I'm following that, or looking at social media, and then I'm following that.
This is a huge issue.
This is every box owner ever.
Yeah.
So what I needed to do? Well, like, remember I talked about what my definition of family is, first to connect it to relationship. So if I'm looking at all that, I'm not paying attention to my wife in the morning, and I really love her. I don't want that, and this is happening to me because of momentum. I didn't mean to be there.
It's just you'd wake up and that was the natural momentum of your day.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to do good business. I'm trying to grow my business. And so all of a sudden
if you're trying to grow your business, you should come on this podcast a couple of years ago. We really would have skyrocketed the business.
Somebody should have called.
We tried.
I want to dig into.
But that's a real thing, though. So I don't want to just skip over that, because this is. There's almost like two phases of this, right? So the first one is, I'm at the rock bottom and I'm trying to get out of that. And I'm neglecting a bunch of things, and I'm, completely blinded by emotion. And then maybe I fix a couple things and I get emotion, and now I'm dealing with a totally separate problem, which is like, now I can't create anything that would resemble, whatever balance would mean to you, or freedom. And now I'm just like, business, this is crushing. I want to do that. And then you wake up and you're like, well, I'm not really having fun anymore.
Right. I take the word balance out of what I do.
It's a dangerous word.
It's a dangerous word, and I have to define it all the time. And I know what you mean, and you mean what I mean.
Yeah.
But when I define it, I say, because we're talking about values we can use. So we have to have a small enough list where it's workable. They have to be authentic, and then they have to really, really protect us. They got to be big mountains that we're willing to die on. They got to be the opposite, or a clear target to aim at. That when we're dealing with some negativity, the stories, emotion, and then we've got to have something that's helping us grow. And I'm using those every day, all of the time. It is the filter that I'm using. And I'm never putting it away. At the beginning of every year, I go back, New Year's, I go back through all the definitions. I work on it. I add a couple of words. I know squarely where my feet are in that analogy for this next year. I know identity, and I'm clear about that. I know who I am as an individual and where I belong in my family and in this culture. I know what that is, and I'm clear about it, and it doesn't matter what another damn person on the planet thinks about it. This is who Jim Hensel is. I know what those values are, and then I'm connecting that to rules, systems, habits, and routines so that I have a fighting chance every day to re-aim.
When that list of values, do you have that available, or is that just something if someone signs up to work with you, you have a...
Well, I have mine, and I know what it is, and I've memorized it, and I work with it.
Not just your specific ones, I mean to choose from.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the process.
Right.
The whole process...
We do something similar, which is like you have to give kind of a general starting point, and then you
But I was wondering if that's something available on the site for, hey, here are 50 example values. Which ones resonate with you? Or?
No, that's not how we do it.
Okay.
It literally starts, the challenges are designed that you do a little bit of writing, and so you're going to come up with that.
With your own.
You're creating that.
Is this
Gotcha.
kind of like story work? Do you do any of that kind of? Or
We do some writing, and I know what that is.
Yeah,
but
okay.
this, I didn't learn any of this in a book. My
Right.
degree's in journalism.
Okay.
I literally just followed my heart, and I started beginning to answer the questions that were in front of me. And then years later, I came around to maybe I should help somebody.
What do you recommend for people? Because we'll take people through similar exercises like this, and there's like a subset of people that really get hung up. So because I want to go back to what you said earlier, which is like you're never really done with these. Like they're never you have
evolving.
seasons of life. They're evolving, and there's a lot of people that will get, stuck hard in that. Well, like, it's not perfect. I can't get past this. I don't feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate that scenario? Where like, hey, it's good enough, or what's your recommendation?
It's a challenge, and so we had to kind of build in for that. And so when you deal, and the only thing I know to talk to is what I created this process.
Right.
That's the only thing I'm an expert at. So. And that's questionable.
You're kind of like us.
Sometimes it goes dark. We call it mayhem after dark. I'm not helping you. Matter of fact, stop listening to me. I only the process I'm really clear on,
mm-hmm.
and I'm really challenging and encouraging and forcing people to just answer the questions I'm asking you to answer,
right,
and not to take more time than I'm allowing.
Got it.
Because if I can get you through the first 3 challenges and you're not freaking out, and people do, then or it's the other way around. They're like, I've already done this. Yeah, we'll write it down.
Right.
Write it down. We need the simple things handled first. Mm-hmm. If I can get you over into 4 and 5 in the challenges, then we're going to be successful. And you're going to end up having a bunch of values to work from that you think are really important. And the challenge will be to pare them down.
Mm-hmm.
But it is difficult in the beginning. That's why I think it takes some time. It's really impossible. And in my mind, I don't see it working for lots of people just to do a little weekend seminar about values because you.
Oh no, I don't. No.
It's like a 30-day nutrition challenge.
Yeah.
Like, cool. It'll help you for a month, and then what? And it's probably very.
It's a jumping on.
It's the momentum you talked about,
Right.
without any of the motion attached to it.
I'm going to go do a corporate gig next week, and I dread it in some ways because
nobody at that corporation watches this podcast. It's fine.
Very good.
We have a lot of corporations.
But I mean, it's not that. It's just getting in front of 40 or 50 people and saying, in 4 hours, we're going to get something done that'll stick.
Right.
Hey, where does that work?
Yeah.
Where does that work? We can
You
get
might
you
hit
started.
1 or 2 people, give them
It'll
that
resonate.
push they
They're
needed,
ready.
right?
I'll look through a crowd of people, and at first it used to really freak me out because I'd go somewhere. Like I did this deal with the referees one time up in Grand Junction at Mesa, and there's like 100 dudes in the room.
What kind of referees?
Basketball referees.
Got it. Okay.
And there's a Division I basketball player.
Yeah, okay.
Not anymore. Not currently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
former life. Really old.
He's got to actually make a game later today.
There's a dude on the front row asleep, and I'm thinking,
Killing
what
it.
I'm getting ready to say here could literally change your
I
life.
wouldn't sleep in front of you just because I'd be scared, really, more than anything. I'd be like, that dude's going to mess me up if I fall asleep.
But when you look across the crowd, there's like, it's right person, right place, right time for this. You'll see somebody locked in on you, and I'm talking to an audience of 7. And those 7 people or 8 people, it's life-changing.
But they're the ones that, because we present every weekend
This
at
happens
seminars.
at the level 1s and the level 2s for CrossFit.
Their heart's in the right place.
And I will say,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong on this one, and you as well, Fern. Sometimes you're making assumptions,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're like, that dude looks bored. Meanwhile,
Correct.
afterwards, like, I was so engrossed
Yes.
in what you were. So you have to kind of navigate that internal battle
100%.
a little. But you're right. Out of 50 participants at a level 1, you're speaking to 10 of them that are like
Yeah.
over the moon about
waiting
this
for the
experience.
right.
And nobody cheers. It's never like, yay, this was the best motivational
You've not
speech
seen
ever.
me talk. Careful with that. You've not seen me at the seminars. A lot of cheering going.
Not when I'm doing it.
Well, so I was just having this conversation. The level 1s, the CrossFit level 1s and the CrossFit level 2s are very unique in this sense, which is, and James Hobart was kind of enlightened me on this years ago. He's like, you will never understand the value of speaking to a CrossFit, to a captive audience until you've been in that setting. Everybody that's there wants to be there.
Yeah.
And even in that scenario, you will still have those people that like you're on a different level with regard to what's happening right now in your experience, and you can still pick them out. But we do have a little bit of an unfair advantage there from a speaking standpoint. It's like they're there because they want to be there. They're stoked
They've
about
paid
it.
$1,000
They've paid
to be
good
there,
money to be
right.
there. So we don't deal as much with the kind of like falling. It does happen.
Because
but
some of those people are required to be there
Right.
for your
Yeah.
presentations, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So-
These people don't know what's coming next week. They got no idea. They think they're on a beach in Florida, and I show up like they just walk out of there like holes in my life.
here to get you fired up about life. Yeah.
I have 2 buzzwords that I want to talk about.
Okay.
The first one, you alluded to it earlier. You said ego. I want to hear about that because it's something I've been really digging into myself, reading a lot about stoicism and ego. And I'll tell you, hanging with these guys for a week, you got to put that ego down because this guy will fight you on anything you say. Like, the sky's blue. He's like, dude, it's orange.
It's technically
It's
not.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, is that my ego talking to me, or do I want to win this argument, or do I want to learn?
Yeah.
Where does that fall into the mindset practice?
This ends up being a big deal when I'm talking to athletes. I think there are 3 spaces in our life that we have to have answers for: mentally, physically, and spiritually. I'm not telling you what those answers are. I think you just have to have them. Or at some point, your power leaks out in one of those areas in your own mind, trying to figure it out. So let's create answers in those spaces. If I'm talking to an athlete, well, the goal is to be completely present, to be values, talents, and purpose where your feet are, and to be task-oriented. We're not thinking about anything else but picking up the bar and putting it down. Mm-hmm. You know, physiologically, what we need to have happening, we all know that.
Right. And
then just doing work to be present. And so if I were to draw a box and put compete in that box, to get into that competitive space, well, what impedes your progress to get in that space? Where is it? Mentally, physically, or spiritually? What is it that you have to leave behind to get present? And some people are really naturally good at it. He's one of them, and he's been trained. Rich Froning, I'm pointing at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, like naturally, he's a competitor.
Yeah.
And then he groomed that. But a lot of people aren't that, and it's really interesting to get to work with athletes, and it's different for all of them, you know. So the 2 places where I know we initially have to go to work are, 1, where do you get easily offended?
Ooh.
That's the space that we got to go to work right away.
Everywhere.
Okay, so I don't even know where we start.
Yeah. I told you this.
I'm offended by that.
Yeah. Yes. What being offended to me means is that your words aren't as developed as your emotions.
So like you were saying about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So your wife leaves. It's almost like you were offended she left because you couldn't vocalize what you were feeling inside.
Yeah, well, the clue is simply people can say things that make us offended, but our response we own.
Right.
So being offended is one. When I say ego, that's a really, really big one. And so we want to do some work there personally, mentally, physically, spiritually. What does that mean for you? Because immediately you're not going to be present in that space. What can I say to you that puts pressure on you that keeps you from being able to be task-oriented?
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just trying to understand. You meant like if you can pull somebody away from that task, their ego is getting in the way because they're reacting internally and not able to vocalize or shift or pivot, whatever necessary to stay on task.
Yeah. Physiologically, you can't feel. I'm not interested in your feelings.
And I think that's like we were having a discussion in the car about a client. And he immediately was arguing with me. And I would say arguing, it was a discussion. And you feel like, okay, I would equate it like I wasn't getting hot, but your temperature rises.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I had the opportunity to say, like, no, we're going to fight about this, and I'm holding true to this belief. Or let me hear these guys out, understand where they're coming from, and see if it makes sense to me.
Well, what ends up happening is your response when you're offended ends up being emotionally based, and you say something you didn't mean to say, or you think about it later and go, dang it, I wish I would have said that.
And you can apply that to relation, like your
anywhere.
wife, husband, significant other.
Anywhere. Anywhere you start to deal with pressure. If you're a police officer and you end up in that kind of a position, what we care is,
That's
arresting
life and
somebody.
death for a police
100%.
officer.
What we care about is the next behavior, not the emotion piece. He can't or she can't feel in that space.
Right. What's
emotion is simply not useful. So we're working on how to use emotion as a fire starter maybe, but for sure if it gets in our way, it goes in neutral, and when we're competing, all we're doing is, well, what's the next behavior? What should you do next?
So obviously working with you and digging deep into this is vital. But if the listeners do you have a tangible exercise? If someone's working on this, they know that they struggle with this. Is it take a deep breath? Is it what's something people can do when they feel that internally?
Yeah, what I'm going to say to you, there are some simple things you can kind of do to just sort of kind of look at that now. But in order to have those answers, I think you got to do some work.
Yeah,
right?
obviously. Yeah. You're putting a Band-Aid on it by just taking a deep breath.
Before we do that, I do want to take a quick break.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back to that, though. What's up, guys? Fern. One of the things we always talk about, one of the main purposes of owning an affiliate is impact. If we think about the hierarchy for a business, impact is at the top of that. If we build the businesses that we want, if we develop the coaches that we want, we build the team, we build the community, one of the things we can have inside the walls of the Rocks is impact in the broader community. And somebody who's crushing it in that is Trish.
So, tell me about your motto for your gym.
So when we first opened, we made it one village, one community, because I wanted to be the CrossFit affiliate that wasn't just the CrossFit facility, but like we did things within the community, whether that means, working with the kids in the area. So we work with a ton of the sports teams. We work with the kids in the school. We do fundraising events for the local community. We have business owners that whenever we do events outside of the gym, we try to make sure we give back to them. With the move, we made sure we used all of our members to like paint and use any vendor we possibly could within the house of our gym.
That's what it's all about, guys. Build a box of your dreams. You can have impact in the larger community and have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
We're actually hoping you will sponsor us for that commercial spot.
Came to the wrong guy. I'll get you some coffee.
So going back to that, you were going to give us maybe, obviously, like you were saying, that's a Band-Aid. You got to do the hard work. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's just beginning, is there, set your alarm on your phone to take a deep breath? Is there something along those lines that you recommend?
This idea of understanding identity and values, the way that this practically applies, once you've kind of done the work and you have some of that understanding, and we could sit down and in 20 minutes have some of that. It's not deep enough unless you do the work. But to apply it works just like scaling it in CrossFit.
Okay.
Where is the place that you can do this and not fail?
So
Pick a small spot.
Instead of maybe
So ring rows for you when I'm doing bar wrestling.
so maybe absent. So kind of like if we were to take this analogy and use it from the real world to CrossFit. So this is the idea of work on this absent of intensity. So in the
technique.
So absent of the pressure, or I can kind of work through that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
100%.
Okay, got it.
I literally watched the movie Gladiator. This was the start of it.
Yeah.
Watching Gladiator,
Great
put the
movie.
kids to bed. There's a scene in Gladiator where he's standing in front of Commodus, his arch enemy, and he defines himself. Pops off his helmet, says, "My name is Maximus Aurelius." He says all that. That's where this started for me. I'm like, screw books. I'm not reading books. I'm not listening to anybody.
Russell Crowe, he does it for everybody. That's where we
I'm going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I heard him say, this is my purpose, these are my values, and this is what I'm going to do. So that was the genesis of this, to start it that way. The space that I chose, the most vile things I've ever said came out of my mouth, and the hate that I had in my heart was the worst I've ever been as a human. And if I told you what it was, you'd probably hate me. You wouldn't even listen to me. That's how much I began to hate in that
But I
space.
think what's important about that is you're not that person anymore.
I'm not.
So it's like seeing somebody who was obese,
Right.
qualify for the games.
Right.
You're like, I trust that dude
What
because
I'm-
he's been through it.
The point, yeah, for sure, it comes from that. The point I'm trying to make is that my emotions couldn't have been more out of control. Right. And I was once I wrote this code for my life, and I had it, and I did it. I wrote it out, and I had it, and it was really authentic. Had a buddy make a tattoo on me, and I was like, I'm living this value every day for the rest of my life, period. And my life started to straighten
better,
out.
yeah.
Everything got filtered through what I said I believed. The place that I started was in the car. I was like, from now on, I'm never gonna mother F anybody again, flip anybody off. I'm gonna turn the radio off.
Pay attention here.
I'm gonna get fully present, not have to have any input.
Does fighting over masks count for this? 'Cause
No.
if okay.
That's a sport.
That's because
Yeah.
he couldn't use a little. We'll start there.
This is where I scaled it though, because I knew I could get in the car and be successful.
Well, it's something
That
very
was scaling.
tangible.
That's a great
Yeah,
way to
that's
look
great.
at that.
It's something tangible. You know you're going to encounter it. More importantly, you can recognize. You're like, oh, this is it right
100%.
here.
I'm shutting the door. I'm gonna live these values in this code in the car.
in this safe space.
I got good at that. I took back Fridays.
You started with one day.
It started with one day. It's just like if somebody's never power cleaned before, I don't even if they're big and strong.
Right.
We're going to start them with the bar or
Right.
with the PVC pipe.
Medicine ball, maybe.
Right.
Something like that.
It's a novel idea.
We don't know if this Rich Froning character is going to last. Mayhem.
Yeah.
Gladiator mindset.
Oh.
If Mayhem falls apart, which
Right.
let's be honest, we're not
It's a
sure.
back hour.
I got other backup.
It's a backup plan.
All right.
Gladiator mindset. I want to hear a little bit about when the teams come here and what their work with you is, like team, because you got a lot of high level athletes. But the other buzzword, I want you to take this passion.
Yeah, this is I want to get your thoughts on that. Just the idea of passion.
Passion is driven by momentum and emotion. I don't necessarily
you were
like
saying.
the
That's what
word
we're talking
passion.
about, yeah.
I don't really like that word.
I don't like it either.
People tell me what they're passionate about, and passionate changes all the time. So that's not that's cool. That fits over on the emotional side of things. But to ask someone in my game to say, "Tell me what you're passionate about," is not the question that I'm asking them.
I think you'd be setting people up for failure. So like my thing is like passion is a shelf life.
Yeah.
Everybody's passionate about all sorts of stuff, and most of it is not forever. And this idea that the book in the book So Good They Can't Ignore You, he kind of unpacks this and talks about passion follows mastery. So when you really become passionate about something is when you become almost obsessed with it. So you become a master at this thing, and the passion isn't like, it's not novel. It's like something that's kind of interwoven into your life. Like, I'm truly passionate about this. I think about it all the time. I'm constantly tweaking it. It brings me joy. It's part of who I am and part of my being. But I think a lot of people, but it is largely emotional. And I think that's the rub.
What happens when you're married for 9 years and you're just not passionate about her anymore?
Right.
Then what happens?
Yeah. Like, have we moved past
Role
this?
playing, things like that.
So, but that's
or your career,
Right.
or this idea of values and purpose has to withstand extreme adversity.
Yeah.
That's the key. Look, think about what I'm getting ready to say. We have to do all kinds of things in life that we don't feel like doing, that are really valuable, like work out, like,
Yeah, that's a great.
like there's all kinds of things that we don't feel good about. So when I'm helping someone define themselves, whatever it is that you say is this identity and these values, they have to survive big opportunities and they have to survive big time adversity. And so passionate to me just ends up being kind of a flimsy word.
Well, I think there's a disconnect sometimes with just regard to this term specifically, and we'll just stick with box owners because that's kind of our swim lane. But maybe I am passionate about helping other people. Okay, cool. That's great. However, in order to do that, you're going to have to do many things that you are not passionate about.
Yep.
You're going to have to learn how to communicate better, either verbally or written format, or you're going to have to learn to do conflict resolution, which might not be super fun for you. None of those things would be fun for a lot of people.
Right.
Like creating systems and procedures and I'm like, I'm not passionate about any of that stuff.
It's huge right there.
Stupid.
Like, I am passionate about coaching somebody and working through this process. I hate the business side of it with a passion.
You just described every CrossFit affiliate on earth.
There you
all
go.
time.
I was
love
getting ready to draw
coaching
the
people. I
analogy.
hate these spreadsheets.
Right. It happens all the time where I get people, they're talking about the do in my game, the do, and what they're passionate about, which to me is more, remember we're talking about purpose being the clues are in your design? It's more about how you're wired up and you're designed and what works really well for you and what you automatically feel good about. Now, I'm really concerned now about what you're going to do about it when you don't feel good about it.
Right.
And connecting that to these values so that you keep that on track.
That's tremendous for box owners to hear.
This is really good stuff, and I think one of the big things that's important here is just to have these conversations. Is the first one, and just to be aware of some of these pitfalls, right? Like, this is a thing. You may not be aware that you're experiencing this. You may not be aware that you're reacting to these emotions, in the way that you are. I want to talk. So, can you talk a little bit about is it a course?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit like how that works? Because people are going to be interested in this, obviously.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? And I obviously don't give everybody the details, but
Sure.
how does it work?
So the course takes about 13 to 14 weeks to get through, and we have a couple of different options. There's a self-paced course where people just use the workbook and the video and all of that and kind of go on their own and do that. We do a live webinar version. So on Mondays, I do a 7 o'clock call and a couple of calls in the evening, and I have a couple other coaches, and so people can use the workbook and the video and all that. Plus, there's a community of people online who are working through these, I call them challenges, and they're all at different places in the process, and so there's these people that you kind of get to bounce everything off, and you have a coach on there who helps talk you through, finish up one of the challenges and kind of close it off and make sure that you did a good job there and set up the next challenge. And then I work with people individually too. And so that's all scalable and all that stuff is on the website. And what I'm asking people to do is first, and the requirement for Mayhem Mindset is to define yourself as an individual first. So I'll have couples come along and they'll do it, or business owners, but I make them do the individual work first. And when you've established that and you know what that is, then it's really easy to decide what that means for your business, because those things aren't the same.
No, and I think working it through with either your significant other or business partner, us, for example, is vital, because when you understand other people, it allows you to interact with them at a much better level. Like even hearing, you go back and hear this fairness thing with Fern, that is clearly a core value of his. Now I understand the argument we were having in the car.
Yeah.
Right? Or how we're going to handle the next argument, which will happen
in 5
almost
minutes,
immediately after this show. Right? But the point is, and I remember I did a half-assed job of everything you're saying in my box, but the example I've told people is I found out one of my coaches' top value was spirituality. And I was always butting heads with him about not showing up on Sundays. I'm like, oh, now that I know this about you, it makes complete sense. You go to church, you spend it with the family, but I had no idea that was a value of yours. So understanding the values of the people you surround yourself with is probably integral in the success
How
of
to
this.
hire properly. You can use that.
Can you elaborate on that? Because this is like a time
Because we're considering hiring that girl over there in the corner.
Yeah.
It's you, Katie.
Young Katie. We might keep her.
Some of the businesses that I work with will bring me in specifically to make sure that they're clear about what all that is, so that they can when somebody comes to sit down and interview, they can talk to them about what their strongest beliefs are, so that it's a good match, so there's a good overlap.
This is all. Again, I use all because it is the vast majority, but they struggle like, well, I'm looking for a new coach, or I need to hire a GM or whatever. Like, and they're like, well, where do I find one? And I'm like, you skipped so many things.
Yeah.
Like we have to cover so many things before we even go out looking, so that you could determine when you do find somebody, how would you filter this person? What would be the criteria with which you would give a yes or a no?
Yeah. Think about this mistake. I worked with this kid who was going to have an opportunity to interview at a big-time football program. And
to play.
To be a coach. He's the coach at a smaller university, and he's going to get this opportunity. He knew it was going to happen.
That's a big deal, too.
Big deal.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about little. I'm talking about national champion people. And he's going to get – he knew a moment in time. And he came to me, and he's like, how do I get ready for this? And he's like, I need to brush up my resume. Right. And I'm, no, do not tell that man what you can do for him.
Right.
Because there ain't anybody standing in front of him that can't do the job.
Right.
You ain't going there.
You're not special there.
No.
Yeah.
For sure. Don't say that. You better tell him in my game who you be, because he's going to hire you based on what he feels like the value you bring, or your values. Are your values comparable to his vision for where he wants to go? He doesn't care if you can do the X's and O's of coaching football.
You wouldn't even be in that conversation.
Standing in there.
Yeah, if you didn't have that.
It's like seminar staff. You're all here because you're good coaches.
Right.
Kid, who are you?
Yeah.
Ends up in an elevator with this guy. Literally, it's an elevator speech from the bottom floor to the top. And he defined himself as he took all the stuff that he did through mindset, and we nail it all the way down to being able to do it in 30 seconds. And he just told that guy who he was in a powerful way. And got off the elevator, and the guy says, you're hired. But he spoke about, here's my identity, here are my values, and this is my mission statement. This is what I'm committing. This is how I'm going to hold myself accountable. Because the dude was already, that was like I'm talking about with Rich. That was the question. Right. And he, to his credit, he knew what his values are. He just hadn't done the work to organize them outside of athletics. Right. He was living them already, and so the values that you see on the walls now were an extension of who he was as an individual and what he wanted for his life and maybe business and platform moving ahead in the future.
I think, tell me if this is right or wrong, but in some instances, depending on the person we're talking about, like they could have a lot of that going well by accident, maybe just due to their surroundings or how they were raised, but it's not clear. Like we work with a lot of affiliates where like they're doing okay, like they're doing some things right, but they have no idea why. They have no idea why this train is moving in the right direction. Right. And it's like, that's a problem. That is a major blind spot of like, if you're not intentionally driving this train, and what I would describe as like the ecosystem has allowed you to be here.
100%.
You have a problem. And the only question is when does this become a problem? But it will become a problem at some point.
What opportunity, a big one, you're going to miss because you didn't know. You didn't know how to respond. You reacted, not respond, and respond is a prepared thing. Mm-hmm. Or what kind of adversity jumps up that you didn't know that was coming. And that happens in all of our lives at some point. It's You just don't know when.
Right.
So I get people in all different areas of life, and oh my God, I need to know this now. Or their consciousness level, and I don't mean woo-woo, I just mean their ability to think is like, hey, I need to be out ahead of this.
Yeah. You're speaking more of like awareness. Oh,
yeah.
I see it. I'm aware of this is happening.
Yeah. Think about what COVID did. And I don't want to get way off into
We
COVID.
talk about that all the time for the affiliates.
Specifically to affiliates.
Box Health, the health of the affiliate.
It exposed that because all of a sudden momentum has shifted. Rules, habits, goals, systems, that don't work right now, man. Now what do you do? Well, I don't know. How do you start over? Well, you better know identity and you better know values as the position of strength to get reset. And if you don't, then you stay swimming around trying to grab hold of something and not really knowing what that is or how to re-aim.
I think this whole idea of the identity was when the kind of the Glassman scenario happened, and there was a big bifurcation of the community, and there's just people like dropping their de-affiliating. I think a lot of that is because they hadn't defined that. They were not clear who they were as an affiliate, absent of CrossFit. So ask the question: what if CrossFit, didn't exist, but you were still CrossFit Mayhem, CrossFit Rife, CrossFit, Best Hour. I almost forgot the name of your affiliate. What would you do in that scenario? Like, are you just dropping the name or is that who you are? And does what you've built in your affiliate, is it going to withstand that outside pressure? Or are you going to flippantly say, nope, I'm dropping my affiliate? I'm like, but why did you do that? And you didn't have an answer. You're just like, well, people are mad. I'm like, everybody's mad all the time. I don't know how this day is actually any different.
In your language, reacting, not responding.
Yeah.
Correct.
I say stop trying to feel right and be right. Capital B-E, values, talents, and purpose. Emotion, we want to get in control of that. Emotion's a great fire starter. What would life be without emotion? I'm not suggesting that but
yeah, you're not suggesting people be robots.
No, not at all.
Emotionless, right?
But what we know is you shouldn't see where your emotion and your values, where one starts and the other one finishes. Mayhem Mindset is simply a process for you to be able to decide what that is for yourself. And all I'm doing, man, is separating feeling from thinking. That's all we're doing.
That's huge.
Just to define yourself.
It sounds that's like one of those things. It's like simple in execution, right? Or simple in theory,
right?
Challenging in execution.
Not easy.
Yeah.
Simple, not easy.
But then when you're done with that, we got to figure out how those things work together.
Right.
Whether you're competing, what does that mean for you? And it's different for every one of these athletes. What it means for them to get present, some of it comes really natural and some of it doesn't. And so working on that skill set to really have your thoughts be way out ahead of your emotions so that you're prepared for that kind of adversity. And then you can be just task-oriented. And if you're worried about what other people think and you're worried about being offended and all that, forget about it. You'll never be everything that you were designed to be. And we can see athletes. We know athletes, if we want to just use CrossFit, or even top 20 type athletes, and their mind is what gets them. It's not necessarily what they're physically capable of.
We were talking about one of your UFC guys, and I mean,
yeah,
that guy's all mind.
100%.
I mean, such a strong mind that he overpowered it from getting knocked down, right? Like, that's incredible.
It's really crazy because one of the things that we talk about, like the lightest side of who you are, the most gracious side of who you are, and then the darkest, evilest side of who you are. And I deal with this with soldiers a lot, because you've experienced that whole entire gamut. And Michael Chandler, who you're talking about, happens to be one of the silliest, funny people I have ever met.
It also seems like he adopted a kid.
Forget about it. When it comes to talking about somebody who's actually living his values, whether you care or you believe his values, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a dude who really does it under a lot of pressure, and that's that dude. And he's the silliest guy that you've ever met, and you get around him and you're thinking,
this guy fights.
You're a savage in the ring.
Yeah. And then the cage door goes closed.
It's a different person.
Holy crap. But he's capable of understanding he can that box, the cage door of competition and who he is and what his identity is in that space. And then he can shift gears and be reconnected. He's the silliest, goofiest, love his little son, love his wife, having a great time with people.
Because if he was that fighter 24 hours a day, he'd have no friends.
Man, it happens all the time.
Be in jail.
You would.
You and him would be cellmates fighting each other.
Yeah. And what happens in the end is that, I don't know, man. We know people in all the sports, who we look at and they make a ton of money and people are watching them, but we'd say they're not really good people and they don't really represent the way I'd want them to be. Or how about politicians? So
are we going there right now?
So we're about to.
Here's what I want to say. This is what I want to say, and this ends up being important in this development. When your platform or your responsibility level get ahead of your character development, then the truth about who you are under extreme adversity is going to be revealed. It'll fold. It's not nefarious. It's not nefarious. It's just you get yourself in a spot where you're not capable. Your thoughts are no longer out ahead of your emotion. And so if we're not doing that kind of a work, especially people who we're looking at, who carrying responsibility, or even in this idea of competition, it's going to catch you at some point. And it's not, like I said, it's not nefarious. I don't know how to say it any other way. It's just you got to keep doing that work so you can stay out ahead of it.
Well, it's like so money and power will do that. They say that, right? Like that brings out the true self.
For sure.
And if that true self is lagging behind, that's when there's that discrepancy between who we think they are and who they really are.
Look at where you spend your money and you spend your time. Those are clues.
Yeah. I think kind of where you're elaborating there, I was just like understanding like there will be bumps, there will be challenges, and I think not enough people are thinking about those out in front. They're like, hey, something's going to happen. And I don't mean you should be a doomsday person, but you're like, to think you're just going to stroll around in life and like nothing's ever going to be, like you're not going to have a business issue, you're not going to lose a loved one, like you're not going to be challenged, like something like, that's just silly. And I don't think people kind of go through the motions enough on that and say, because I do, this is very analogous to sports, which is, you know, for you played football, I played basketball, but like I wrestled. You wrestled. Did you? But like we would do those scenarios.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, we tee up the scenario and let's practice it. So when it does happen, at least we have some sort of awareness. Like that's the scenario we dialed up. It's not going to be exactly like that, but I generally have a plan or a scheme with which to approach this. And you can do that mentally. You can do that inside the business. Like, hey, 100%. When I get the bad news about whatever, you didn't get your business loan or whatever it might be, what is my reaction going to be? Is it going to be like, this is stupid, I quit, I folded up? Or is it like, okay, plan B was this. Okay, plan B fell apart, cool. Plan C was this. And I just have all these courses of action, but they're all based in kind of like the value, which is like, hey, you know, fairness or whatever it might be, or it's just like driven, like just making up words. But you see where I'm going with this? Just like moving out forward and say like, what would the roadblocks be? What would the problems be? And then what would my reaction be to that? And that's one of the biggest things I ever took from athletics was kind of this idea of like, what is the outside world going to throw at me, and what would my general reaction to that be? I was very good at it in some aspects of my life, very terrible at some aspects of my life, and then starting to recognize a little bit, I can use this sports skill set, and I can start to move it into other areas, like how I manage like a business partnership, or how I manage my business, my affiliate, and how I manage my coaching staff.
Yeah.
Hey, what happens when those two have a fight? Well, like they're doing great right now. No, they're going to have a fight. I don't know what it's going to be about. It doesn't matter, but there will be a fight here. And then what am I going to do about that? Am I going to take sides? But catching yourself in some of those scenarios, like a perfect example would be in a gym. If you have two coaches, one's new, one's been their senior, and they have some sort of conflict. And if you haven't started to unpack that scenario in which they have a conflict, you would not be able to recognize, I'm gravitating to this person because they've been here longer and I have some sort of loyalty to them, even though the other person might need me to stand up for them in this scenario and have some sort of objective conversation. But you have to walk that out. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, oh, no, he's right, he's been here longer. And I'm like, well, that's a stupid reason to do this. But there is no logic in that. And you've not removed yourself from the scenario. Be like, how could I resolve this conflict and have them be better together as a team as the result of the fight? Not necessarily like, oh, well, this is it. This is the end of it.
Yeah, the thoughts.
But it goes back to
have
everything
to be more
you said.
developed than the emotion of that moment.
Right.
And that's the values versus rules that you discussed earlier with the girls.
It starts with identity. Here's who we are as a gym. This is why we're doing this. Now, here are our core values. This is where this whole thing starts. Filter what happened through that, and now let's connect that to what the goals were for the year, how that works. And now, it's going to be clear. By the time you've done that work, you're going to know. There were two things. One, you said, how do people get this started? Take a look at where you're easily offended and think about your need to be liked.
Ooh.
Where do you compromise?
Those are the two things.
Those are the two.
Where do you get offended? Your need to be liked.
And your need to be liked. When you get in a space where all of a sudden you find yourself compromising what you believe in because you want someone to like you. You're looking for that affirmation. Those are the two spaces. And if you want to start by naming 3 values. And I'm defining values as strongest beliefs, because we know that's how it works. Your brain is trying to make your biggest choices and decisions based on your strongest beliefs. It's to be human. So develop one that's a big rock, a mountain you know you're willing to die on, and get a solid definition. That's a strength value. Get a weakness value. Pick out an emotion that seems to get the best of you, and then find a value that is the opposite of that. That's a clear target to aim at. Not because you feel it, but because you believe it. Make a commitment to respond that way. And then the other one would be an ideal value. And that's like, hey, man, like, I'm going to grow in this area this year. I'm not necessarily great at it, but I'm going to kind of grind at this all year. And if you started there, it would start to bring you some clarity.
I love that. Before we wrap up, I know you got a 1 o'clock workout. Talk to us a little bit about the transition. Rich reaches out to you, I need a coach, to the growth of Mayhem Mindset, where now you work with, I'm assuming, the team and many of the individual people here. So how did that growth of the company work with you and Rich?
Yeah, it's one, it's really important that different people need this at different times. And when you're talking about high-level athletes, and we start talking about buzzwords like mindset and all that, some people don't need that. They're doing fine, you know, like.
Are you? That's me you're saying?
Yes. I was going to say that next. I was like, look.
Am I the highest?
I'm literally
good.
When you finish,
do you want to hire me?
When you finish the course, I give everybody a challenge coin, and I'm just going to grab you one.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't want to know where I put that coin, sir.
This is different for everybody, and it's not something that you can just put on somebody. It doesn't work like that. So there are athletes that come here that I'm just their friend, and we don't ever do any work.
So it's not mandatory. You want to be a part of this crew here.
No.
Tell me about your feelings.
Jim, right?
Yeah. No, like in some of that, sometimes people they end up want to talk about what's going on in their personal world, and what that
but that
is.
might be what they need.
It is 100%
athleticism, right?
They're doing great over here and compete, and then they go home and and it's a mess because there's still that kind of intensity going on. They don't know how to shift gears. So it's not a mandatory thing by any means, and there are various different athletes in here that have done different parts of all of this. For Rich, it was literally right person, right place, right time. And
you were in the area, not far, Nashville to Cookeville.
I was working over at Tennessee Tech, and someone that he knew said, "Hey, you should talk to him." And when we started having the conversation, I did nothing to help him with being a CrossFit champion at all. We weren't talking about how to compete better and be more present. He was literally thinking about, you know what, like, yeah. Like, I don't want to get lost in the definition of being this CrossFit athlete, and I care about my wife and my children and my family, and for him it's his faith. And so I really want to organize those thoughts, and I really want to make sure that the definitions of that are real, and I want to test it to make it sure it's not BS and it's something that I'm living, so that when I'm done with this, the road ahead of me is really clear.
Well, it's very apparent that is the case. We were having this conversation in the car when we left. It's just like kind of watching everything go on. Like we were here for the most of the day yesterday, and just watching and observing and seeing the people coming in and out and moving, and then meeting the team, and just all the stuff. And it's very apparent that he's really done a good job of like removing like rich CrossFit Games athlete.
I mean, there's a couple pictures of him around
there's a
the
handful
gym,
of pictures of him in here, but but
he
really
wasn't responsible for those, by the way. He came in there when they put them up. He's like, "What? I don't know.
This looks weird.
I can't climb up there and pull them down."
Yeah, but it's very apparent that he's done a lot of work in order to create that, and it's really cool to see.
Here's the word I would use with Rich that I think, because if he was here and you talk to him, he will tell you he's not perfect. He's just a dude. Like he's not going to want that kind of praise. That's really, and nothing here is perfect. These are just people, for sure.
Well, nothing is.
Nothing is, right? Yeah. But he's authentic. And that's really what I'm chasing in Mayhem Mindset. Live your life in an authentic way. Make sure that your emotions, you can dial them up when you need to, and you can control them when you need to control them. Make sure that living life with emotion, not because of emotion, is what's going on in your world. And then make sure that the choices and decisions are based on strongest beliefs, like something that's authentic. Because in the culture we live in now, it just happens to be in the time that we live in with media and all those things, if you don't define yourself, then somebody else will
real quick.
It's going to happen that way to you.
Yeah.
And so here, he lives in a little small Cookeville.
Did you move here? Did you relocate to Cookeville?
I did. I married a girl from here, and we just happened to move here.
Got to see about a girl.
Yeah, it was about a girl.
Nice.
She's amazing.
That's your current wife.
Yes.
That's
Yes. Yes.
That's how that works.
Yeah, just making sure. I'm trying to follow the story.
One of the coolest things she ever said to me one time was I slipped up with a name, and it only happened once.
You called her the wrong name?
I called her the wrong name.
That doesn't usually go well.
Say what?
No.
You might
And
need some help with the mindset.
Holy, you know what? I don't know if I can swear on your podcast.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, but I'm your favorite wife. With just a cold, icy stare. I'm like, you are my girl.
You're like, I
How
love
long
you.
have you been married?
I love you. I'm simultaneously terrified that you might kill me.
I'm watching you right now. Okay.
No, she's amazing. This woman is amazing. 9 years.
Congrats,
Pushing on
dude.
that.
That's awesome.
Congrats, yeah.
This has been amazing, man. I think affiliate owners will take a lot of good snippets from this. Hopefully, Jay will get at least 1% better from this.
What I took from it is I'm already doing everything.
Yeah, let me get you that challenge going
Yeah,
here.
give me the coin. We're
Move
good.
along.
I'm actually leaving Best Hour. I would now work with Mayhem Mindset.
Yeah, so mayhemmindset.com, Instagram.
Jimmy_Hensel.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So if you guys want to reach out. If you guys want to swing into Mayhem and get your mind right,
Yeah.
it's a little terrifying.
And I want to be
sometimes,
clear.
but-
We walk in, you're living everything you're saying. I'm going to be here till 11. I'm free. I got a 1 o'clock, the freedom thing.
Yeah.
It's there. So
Intentional. Trying to be intentional.
I think a lot of people talk like you talk. Then you get to see him, and you're like, oh, that dude's not living anything he's saying.
I'm
You're
telling
doing
you
everything
right
you
now,
just spoke about.
Just so you
it's
know,
clear to us.
everything that I know is truth in my life right now was because I completely drove it in a freaking ditch. Not because I was so smart. And I want to make that very clear.
Same.
I think that's, if you're talking about being good at anything, I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
So thanks for having us,
Yes,
man.
sir.
It was a pleasure
That was
chatting
great.
with you.
That was great. We
thanks,
appreciate it.
Fist bump. Cool. See you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and we want to thank our partner and sponsor, O2. If you're an affiliate owner and have questions about carrying O2 in your facility or interested in a free refrigerator, go to wholesale.drinko2.com/pages/best-hour-offer for more details. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.